Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And we are still waiting for this 2037 to 2038 offseason to get underway. Did our annual roster review in our last episode. Appreciate the initial thoughts from the Worldwide Scouting Department on what we should do regarding some of the decisions we have ahead of us. Notably, as we talked about last episode, we've got decisions around our catching position, who among Mike Gerard and Nate Harris should be the backup to J.D. Lee. We've got some questions around our infielders when we think about some of our veterans, whether it's Elian Pena, Derby Mahez, or Rosnile DePaula, which one or perhaps even two of them should maybe not be back with us next year. What should we do with the Wellington Herrera option year? What should we do with Ted Miller, who is getting ready to potentially head to free agency? And on all of those questions and some other questions, including what to potentially do in free agency, most notably with the potential two-way player from the Chicago White Sox, Connor Camo. Gotten a lot of good thoughts and input already from the likes of Undercover Boomer, Wyme943, Avery Shaham, and Ravenspawn3. So thank you all for your thoughts. I'm sure more will be coming in before we need to make any decisions. Have some directions that I'm leaning, but fortunately, since we're not going to be moving forward in this episode, don't have to make any decisions quite yet. And the focus in this episode is going to be checking in on some of our former players, checking in on some of the top prospects in baseball, and ultimately checking in on some of the top prospects in our own organization here. Start with some of our former pitchers. We traded away Gregorio Olvera to the Marlins with some others to bring on the catcher Lee, who obviously had a very good year for us, as we talked about last episode. Olvera remains a pretty good major league pitcher, started 32 games for the Marlins, 10-7 record with a 3.54 ERA and a 2 WAR. The 28-year-old still a good, solid major league pitcher. Can say the same thing about Andrew Painter, who was a very important pitcher for us for many years. In Baltimore now, after we traded him there about a year and a half ago, 10-6 with a 3.60 earned run average and a 2.3 WAR for the Orioles this season. So even though he's headed towards the age of 35, Painter remains a very productive major league pitcher. Dan Patterson was a key piece of the trade that brought us our guy who had to be our number 2 starter this year, and Mr. Russell. Patterson, 24-year-old, former number 1 pick for us in the first round, listed as the 71 prospect in baseball. Split the year between AAA, where he was 6-2 with a 5.32 ERA, and then pitched 18 games in the majors, albeit only one start, 2-1 record, 6.33 ERA. So he certainly was not good, making his major league debut this year. Still has a profile that suggests he can be a pretty good major league pitcher. Not a ton of stamina, though. And at the age of 24, he'll be 25 before next season begins. This next year and a half or so is probably going to be critical for him in terms of reaching his full potential. Ryan Kerkering, guy who was a big reliever for us for a number of years, now with the Dodgers, had a 3-3 record with a 3.06 ERA for our divisional rival, win of about 1, which is kind of what he's become at this point in his career. And then Orlando Morales, who was another guy that we included in the trade to the Marlins, former very prominent IAFA signing of ours. Split the year between AAA and the majors, 4.81 ERA in AAA. Was actually better in the majors, where he had a 2.45 ERA over 25 and 2/3 innings. Struck out a batter or an inning, was a bit above replacement level overall. Certainly doesn't look like he's going to be an ace, and he is a guy who we had envisioned as a potential starter, and his stamina has just gone down the tubes over the course of his development, unfortunately for him. So looking more like Mr. Morales will be a lefty reliever down the line. Turning our attention now to some of our former position players, Tev Rubler was a big part of the trade that brought us the pitcher Bob Russell, and the switch hitter who just turned 24 years old, certainly still looking like he can be a very good major league hitter. Batted only .226 in the majors this year for Atlanta. Did have 22 doubles and 18 homers, put up a 110 WRC plus. Reasonably good at drawing walks. Only less than a win above replacement, given that he doesn't bring much to the table defensively, but still looks like he could be a pretty interesting bat. And then Kevin Waymont was another guy that we included in that trade with the Braves for Russell. Hit .248, 10 homers and 40 ribbies and 307 at-bats. You'll recall he hit 22 home runs for us as a rookie. Kind of got caught in a numbers game in our outfield. Doesn't look like he's going to be a superstar, but still certainly seems like he can be a useful major league outfielder. Good influence in the clubhouse as well. Jordan Contreras, 27-year-old former IAFA player. .221 average for the Cubs in the majors this year and 199 at-bats. Below average offensive player. Remains very effective on the base path, successful in 23 out of 25 stolen base attempts. An above average player given his speed and respectable defense, but the bat certainly not looking like it's anything special at this point. Adail Amador suffered a fractured skull back in April. That's a very significant injury. Played in just 7 games this year. Did hit .304 and 23 at-bats before that very significant injury. He'll be 35 by the start of next season. Still solid defensively, but he's lost his speed, and the bat certainly not looking much very special at this point, although he still has a pretty good eye in terms of drawing walks. Marcelo Meyer, another guy who is getting older, wrecked physically. He'll be turning 35 in about a month. Hit just a .176 in 290 at-bats for the Giants this year, so real rough season for him with just a 37 WRC plus, and he has really been deteriorating relatively rapidly since we moved on from him. Unfortunately, speaking about deteriorating relatively rapidly, Gus Nieves fits the bill there as well. Hard to believe that it's been 3 full seasons since we moved on from Pex Nieves and let him sign with the Padres, but we've won the World Series every year since he left. His batting average, his OPS, and his WRC plus have all deteriorated each year. He's been below replacement level the last couple of years, given his defensive limitations. So his years with us were incredible, but I think we cut bait with him at the perfect time. 73 homers and 202 ribbies in 3 years with the Padres, but just a .230 average, and he's basically been a league average offensive player, but basically about a replacement level guy when all is said and done in San Diego. Drew Romo probably getting close to the end as well, although he still was the everyday catcher for the White Sox this year. The batting average unfortunately dipped to below the Mendoza line at a .194, just a 44 WRC plus, and his defense is still good, but not what it was back in the day, and he was ultimately below replacement level this year. Dean West, former center fielder for us, hit .197 in 370 at-bats in a year where he turned 33 years old for the Mariners. Still a win above replacement, still a solid defensive player, and pretty good base runner, but certainly not missing him particularly much at this point with the trajectory that our Rockies have been on. We'll turn our attention now to some of the top prospects in other organizations, starting with the position players. Saul Bellow was an international free agent signing from earlier this year, a guy that we shot our shot on and unfortunately didn't have enough money to sign. He off to a very nice start in rookie ball, 389 average with ridiculous 68 runs batted in 55 games for the A's. Still looks like he could be a pretty incredible hitter. Danny Betancourt, IAFA signing, also from this past year, split the year between rookie ball and A ball at the age of 17 for most of his action at those two levels. 142 and 139 WRC pluses respectively at those levels. Another guy who looks like he could be a very interesting offensive player. Shortstop Danny Pantoja, IAFA signing from 2035, made it all the way up to AAA this year where he did hit 292 and 48 at-bats. Certainly looking like a very good infield prospect, only 20 years old. Wouldn't be surprised to see him making his major league debut before the age of 21 next year. Franklin Rivera is a guy that we kind of shied away from based on his average defense behind the plate and the fact that he's going to strike out a ton, but certainly in terms of his power and his eye is incredibly developed, and he had a huge year for the Pirates this year. His first full year in the majors, hit 253 with 34 homers and 88 ribbies, walked 79 times, ultimately put up a 160 WRC plus and a 5 WAR. Did strike out a sickly 177 times in less than 400 at-bats, but clearly an extremely productive offensive player for those of you who liked Igniter, the switch-hitting catcher. Omar Gallo, a right fielder, now 24 years old, 297 average, 14 homers and 55 ribbies, his first full year in the majors with the Twins organization. Put up a 136 WRC plus and a 3 WAR. David Morales, a 23-year-old right fielder, 277 average for the Giants this year. Did have 39 doubles for them. Ultimately was a league average offensive player and put up a 2.2 WAR a year after that brilliant first full year in the majors where he put up a 5.3 WAR for the Giants. Whether he's actually a 2 WAR player or a 5 WAR player will go a long way towards determining how much value he has across his career. David Hood, a guy that we were hoping might fall to us in the second round of this year's draft, USC product from this past season, hit 242 and 124 at-bats for the Akron Rubber Ducks, AA affiliate of the Cleveland Guardians, so was slightly below average offensive player in AA, slightly above replacement level overall. Still a guy who's not too far off from being able to help in the majors, and certainly someone who we wish we had the opportunity to potentially get in the second round this past year. Catcher John Galvez, another catcher that we weren't as high on given the weakness in his defense. 20 years old today, so happy birthday to the fictional John Galvez. Spent the entire year in A-ball in the Angels organization where he hit 233, put up a 93 WRC plus. Best case scenario, he looks like a competent major league catcher. And certainly no guarantees he'll reach his best case scenario. Shortstop Matt Arnold was a guy whose glove was always very intriguing. Went in the second round in 2033. The bat was the question for him, and at 26 years old, I think it's fair to say he doesn't have a major league bat hit 262 in 390 at-bats in AAA this year. But the Pirates, where he's been throughout his career, have never brought him up to get major league action, despite his great glove. Clearly, the bat never developed to the point that it would need to be. Second baseman Bobby Hanks, first-round pick a year ago out of Stanford University, spent the whole year in AAA this year, where he hit 271, did have 17 homers, basically was a league average offensive player. Still certainly looks like he could be a useful major league infielder, but doesn't necessarily look like he's going to be anything special. Speaking of nothing special, Daniel Roberts is a guy who went in the second round back in 2034. We were pretty disappointed when we didn't have the opportunity to pick him with our second round pick. But his development has certainly not gone as expected. Split this year between high A and double A, 269 average and 156 at-bats in double A, slightly above replacement level. Like the speed, a solid glove, but the question with Mr. Roberts grunting Jim is ultimately going to be his bat. Brad Simons was a glove that we were pretty attracted to a few years ago in the draft, coming out of the University of Nevada. Another guy who we hoped might fall to us in the second or third round. That did not happen. He did play briefly with the Phillies a couple years ago. Spent this entire year in AAA, though, where he hit 267. Did have 36 homers and 82 ribbies, 180 strikeouts and 439 at-bats, although we were intrigued by his glove and may have considered him in the second or third round. We didn't get that opportunity. His contact and his strikeouts were a concern from ours. He'll be 26 years old before next season starts, so doesn't seem like he is particularly likely to have the most fruitful career. Center fielder Jose Ibarra, 226 average this year and 336 major league at-bats. Did have 18 doubles, 10 homers, 87 WRC plus, and was basically a replacement level player for the White Sox organization. He'll be 25 in the not too distant future, so we'll probably start paring this list down a bit, given that there are a few guys in their mid-20s that don't really seem like they're going to have big-time careers at this point. And we'll move on now to the pitchers. A couple of guys that we hoped we might have a shot at in the second round of this past year's draft, although we didn't think in the case of Alec Morellis particularly that we'd get a shot. Went with a supplemental pick, 32nd overall, so right after we were picking the high school pitcher, lefty, in the White Sox organization, and he'll presumably be making his major league or his minor league debut, his professional debut next year. Mark Canfield, the lefty out of Western Kentucky, was 4-0 with a 3.58 ERA in 5 starts at AAA for the St. Paul Saints of the Minnesota Twins organization. Canfield still certainly looks like he could be a pretty solid major league pitcher. 23-year-old reliever Phil Davidson, who went in the second round back in 2032, thought he might become a monster reliever. Doesn't necessarily seem like that's going to be the case. Almost 24 years old. The control's still a very big issue. Split the year between AA and AAA and was very effective at both levels before he did make his major league debut for the Angels. Allowed 2 earned runs, 2 hits, a walk, over 2 innings pitched. One of the hits that he allowed was a home run, an admittedly very small sample size for Cheetah Davidson. 24-year-old Matt Stream, a guy who was a first-round supplemental pick in 2031, another guy who made his major league debut this year. 4 games out of the bullpen for the Orioles, 2.35 ERA over 7 2/3 innings pitched. Certainly still looks like he could be a pretty good major league starter. but closing in on the age of 25, it's really going to be time for him to reach some of the untapped potential that we still think he has relatively soon. 24-year-old Mark Almquist, number 68 prospect in baseball, second-round pick a year ago, 8-6 with a 4.44 ERA for the AAA Columbus Clippers. Did not get an opportunity to make his major league debut yet. Presumably that will happen next year at the age of 25. At this point, you like the personality, you like the endurance, you like his ability to hold on the runners. But when you look at his overall skill set, certainly seems to be trending towards a back of the rotation type of starter. 21-year-old Sam Call split the year between rookie ball, A ball, and high A. Was reasonably productive / respectable at those levels. The 21-year-old still think his movement and control could be well above average. But the pitching arsenal is not impressive, and his stamina really has not developed. Just don't know that the stuff is going to be good enough for Mustache Call to really be a productive major leaguer. Tim Knox, reliever that we had looked at a few years ago in the 2034 draft. He went in the second round before we were on the board. Another guy who made his major league debut this year, put up a 1.42 ERA over 12 2/3 innings for the Seattle Mariners. The stuff still looks excellent. The movement kind of average-ish, and the control going to be a potential issue. He did walk 8 batters in those 12 2/3 innings that he pitched, but he also struck out 17. So still looks like he could be a useful major league arm, but probably going to walk too many batters for me to be very comfortable with him. Chris Tackett, 22-year-old, split the year between AA and AAA, 3.08 ERA in AA, ERA closer to 5 in AAA for the Reds organization. Tackett, the right-hander, who's now 22 years old, really looks more like a back of the rotation type of guy. And honestly, right now, he's probably still not quite ready for the major leagues. Think he can still hit 100 miles on the radar gun, but question, based on what our scout thinks at least, whether he's really going to have a long and fruitful major league career. And before we take a look at the top prospects in our organization, we'll talk through our initial thoughts on what we might try to do in the development lab this year. In recent years, we've had more of a focus on younger players on our major league roster and a little bit less of a focus on the younger prospects in our organization. Going to be a little bit different this year, partially because several of the top prospects in our organization who are kind of major league ready are all banged up right now and can't be in a program. That includes the starting pitcher, Jeff Colson, the pitcher, Kikaku Kawakami, who's going to miss all of next year. Colson, I guess if we find out that shoulder injury that he suffered a few days ago is not that serious, is a guy we could potentially get into the lab, but given that it's been a few days and it is a shoulder and he's fragile physically already, I tend to think that's going to be more significant. Johnny Castillo and Mike Castro are two very strong Rookie of the Year candidates this year, also banged up and unfortunately not eligible to start programs. So because of that, a little bit of a younger influence in the development lab and what we're thinking about doing at this point. Think about putting the 24-year-old Melvin Reyes to work on his pitch movement. He had a rough introduction to the majors this year. Another 24-year-old David Guadron, first-round pick from a couple years ago, going to work on improving his pitch arsenal, hoping that maybe we can get that changeup to be a more effective pitch for him down the line. Leo Martinez, the veteran, going to work on endurance training for him. He's a guy who we still have signed for many more years, and looks like he's pretty much tapped out in terms of most of his skills. So we'll see if we can at least keep him with above average stamina and maybe help stretch him out a bit. Carlos Barrel Davia, going to work on his gap power for the 20-year-old. Still think he is a future star for us, hopefully. Wasn't great in AA for us this year, but he was only 20 years old in AA, listed as the number 3 prospect in baseball. Jesse Hoffmeister, 24-year-old who made it up to AAA this year. We're a former second-round pick. We're going to work on his pitch movement. Jake Lyons, another 24-year-old who we picked in the second round a couple years ago, made his major league debut this year for us. Work on his control. Mike Witherspoon, 20-year-old who was a first-round pick for us 3 years ago. He was 12-1 after he got promoted to high A ball from A ball this year, combined 18-1 between those two levels. And we are going to have Crazy Witherspoon working on his pitch movement. And then David Snacks Marsh, second round pick of us in 2035, and one of the better outfield prospects in our organization at this point. Split the year last year between A and high A, where he combined for 23 homers and 98 ribbies. And Snacks Marsh is going to work on his home run power potentially in a generate bat speed program. And we will finish things off with a deeper look at our farm system and some of our top prospects. We've already touched upon a few of these guys with our initial thoughts on the development lab. Second-ranked minor league system, but you can see by these ridiculous levels in the lower levels of these ridiculous records in the lower levels of our minor league system that the tweaks the developers made to the minor leagues a couple of months ago at this point are still causing big problems. If you followed us over the years and you remember, I've typically actually had very poor results in rookie ball and A ball. A lot of times my teams have really struggled there with the way I build them, particularly with probably a somewhat larger number of high school prospects than some other teams pick for those lower levels through the draft. So the fact that it's turned around so significantly this year makes me think that there's still something that I don't know exactly what they were trying to fix with the tweaks that they made to the minor leagues, but it certainly seems broken from my perspective. Is all of my lower minor league teams are just ridiculously dominant, and we'll see that in some of the numbers that some of these prospects have been putting up. We already touched upon the top prospect in our organization, Carlos Davia. Held his own as a 20-year-old in AAA or in AA this year, where he spent most of the season. Would think that he'll probably start next year in AA, get to AAA hopefully around the All-Star break, and he conceivably could be a September call-up for us next year if things go well for Bear Barrel. Nils Mensch, IAFA signing from 2036, the number 32 prospect in baseball. This is one of those guys who just had a silly season in the DSL for us. Hit close to 500 with ridiculous 48 extra base hits and 112 ribbies in 54 games for that team that I think might have only been a team that lost one game. Yeah, so I mean, it's just gotten silly in the minors at this point, unfortunately. Mike Witherspoon, our first round pick from 2034, we talked about him, combined 18-1 with combined 7+ wins above replacement in A and high A for us. Still looks like he could develop into a pretty solid major league pitcher. Steve Guillory is a guy we just drafted in the third round this year. He was a guy looking for big money. He's considered the number 52 prospect in baseball. Top dog Guillory will be making his professional debut next year. Jesse Hoffmeister, talked about him, thinking about having him in the development lab. He was 9-6 with a mid-5 ERA in AAA for us this year. Eric Schweitzer is a guy who we picked up in a trade with the White Sox when we traded them Drew Romo years ago. 5-0 in high A ball, and then 1-0 in 3 starts in Double A. Although he really doesn't have the stamina to be a starter or a 3-pitch arsenal. We have been starting him over the course of his career. As he gets closer to the majors, though, we'll probably put him into more of the relief role that will be what he's doing if and when he does make his major league debut. 2 other top 100 prospects. Gustavo Esqueda, number 70 prospect in baseball, was our IAFA signing this year. Still looks like he could be a pretty useful player. Silent Jake will likely be making his major league or his professional debut in the DSL next year. And then Michael McCottrell, shortstop, who we picked in the first round this year, also will be making his professional debut next season. I have several other players who are ranked between 100 and 200 on the list. Carlos Sotelo, IAFA signing from 2035, pitched on both of our rookie teams this year, and then 4 games in A-ball for us. Mixed results among the 3 levels. Honestly, looks like best case scenario for Sotelo is a back of the rotation type of guy. 19 years old, some negative personality traits, fragile in terms of his injury proneness. So certainly questionable what Sotelo will ultimately become. Evan Kluver is looking somewhat disappointing. First round pick from 2036. Did make his major league debut for us this year. He was respectable at AA, AAA, and the majors this year, but unfortunately is looking like a back of the rotation type of starter in the best case scenario. When a year and a half ago when we drafted him, we thought he had potential to be much more than that. Shortstop Alex Gamez, second round pick a year ago in 2036, made his professional debut, hit over 400 with 67 ribbies in 47 games for our dominant ACL team. Alan Rancourt, he's a third-round reliever we picked out of UC Riverside a year ago. He really has not developed well either. Our college pitchers from that year, Packy Kluver and Alan Rancourt, have really seen their ceilings get a lot lower, unfortunately. Rancourt started the year in high A ball. We did promote him to Double A. He honestly wasn't particularly good at either level. Rancourt, another guy who a year ago when we were picking him, we thought a lot more of his potential than we think today, unfortunately. Still looks like he could be a useful major leaguer, but certainly not a star. Orlando Preciado, a scouting discovery from about a year and a half ago, 5-0 for us in rookie ball this year with a 3.43 ERA. Looks like he could be a back of the rotation starter if all goes well. At 18 years old, still a lot more time for his development to go one way or the other. Final top 200 prospect that we have, Elliot Bedford, who was our third-round pick back in 2034. Split the year between high A, where he hit a stupid 430, and Double A, where he hit 314, combined for 24 homers and 90 ribbies at those 2 levels, with WARs of over 3 at each level, or 3 or higher at each level. Like the durability, the glove is okay. The bat looks like it's going to be okay. Certainly could see him being a useful backup catcher down the line, but would prefer better defense, quite honestly. He is a guy who will probably be working on his defense in the development lab in a few months. You can see some other prospects in the organization. There's only 6 left on the list of our top 20 prospects, so we might as well talk about each of them quickly. Starting pitcher Tony Pantoja, second round pick for us this year out of Campbell University. 2-1 in high A, and then 1-1 in double A with an ERA of over 7. Pantoja looks in a similar theme to a lot of these other pitchers we've talked about, like a 4th or 5th starter in a best case scenario. Starting pitcher Joe Burke was a 4th round pick in 2034. Split the year between A and high A, combined to go 14-1 with those two dominant teams. Another guy who looks like a 5th starter type in a best case scenario, and at almost 22 years old, he's got a lot of work to do just to get to the point where you'd think he could be a 5th starter. Manny Soto, 1st round draft pick from 2035. 4-1 in rookie ball for us this year, but did have an ERA in the mid-6s. He's now 20 years old. Presumably will move the lefty up to A ball next year. Still like his diverse arsenal of pitches, but doesn't look like he's going to be particularly special, unfortunately. Roberto Martinez, 4th round pick of ours this past year. He'll be making his his professional debut next spring. Second baseman John Jefferson, an 8th round pick in 2035, who's worked out reasonably well for us. Hit 482 in rookie ball this year, and then 477 when we promoted him up to A ball in 107 at-bats. Looks like a decent glove, although certainly would typically want a better glove for infielders. Looks like his bat could be useful. He's fragile physically, not really much of an outfielder. Looks like could be a usable bench piece and platoon piece potentially down the line, but certainly don't see superstar potential for him. Ryan Bull unfortunately suffered a torn rotator cuff back in August. 13-0 in high A ball, and then 1-0 in 3 games in double A. Looking at his potential ratings, still could be one of the more interesting pitching prospects in our organization. Unfortunately, he's going to be 23 years old next year. Really going to have to start developing that third pitch, that changeup that hasn't done much of anything if he's ever going to be an effective major leaguer. Do like the potential for really good control and above average movement. The question with him is going to be his stuff, but certainly a guy who does have some potential. And with that, we will call it an episode. Next time around, we are going to start thinking more seriously about starting moving forward through this offseason. Some of the decisions that we're going to have ahead of us as far as Miller, the pending free agents, and then also a number of interesting arbitration decisions. Probably will be exploring trading away some of the potentially excess depth we have. We talked about the 2 catchers. We talked about the 2 infielders. Unlikely that between Harris, Girard, DePaula, and Mahez that more than 2 of those guys will be back with us next year. Not necessarily expecting there to be a ton of trade value in any of them, given that some of their contracts are getting a bit expensive for what they are. And in the cases of Girard, DePaula, and Mahez, we've got guys who are all fragile, or in the case of Girard, very likely to come back wrecked physically after playing only 71 games over the past 3 years. So still have some interesting decisions that we need to think about. If you've got any more thoughts and input on what you would do with some of the scenarios we laid out in the last episode, always helpful to hear more from the Worldwide Scouting Department. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.